Wait lang, madam. Wait lang. Live na pala tayo dito. Okay. Off yung mga internet na please. Alright. Welcome back everyone dito sa latest episode ng Deep Dive. Katulad ng pangako natin, we'll try to make things a little bit more production level even though wala tayong production ngayon. So medyo tayo lang. So kung dun sa ating Facebook channel, you see a bit of an oily version of us. Ito po ay dahil sa masyado yata malakas itong 4K camera na ginagamit natin. Na it took us more an hour to set up or so. But pasensya na lang. But please, let's focus on the contents ng pag-usapan natin today. As you may know, earlier today, and I think kaka-upload lang natin ngayon sa YouTube channel natin, Deep Dive with Richard Heydarian, yung discussion natin in very, very granular and multifaceted detail, no? Ano po yung mga implications, ano po yung relevance, at ano po yung mga points scored and points missed dun sa quote-unquote hearing debate na nangyari kahapon sa Senado. Again, let me say, as someone who has done competitive debating or used to do competitive debating, and then after that just debating because I just love debating everyone based on facts, based on evidence, as a public thinker, or to sound a little bit more pretentious, public intellectual, right? Kasi mukhang hindi ata alam ng isang senador kuda ng kuda at gumagamit ng mga malamalu na mga analysis. Hindi niya ata alam. Meron tayong category na hindi po political analyst lang. Kahit sino naman pwede maging political analyst eh. May mga ka-DDS nga natin, dami nilang political analyst sa SMNI International. No, we're talking about public thinkers, intelligentsia, right? As Isaiah Berlin best put it in his analysis of the role of yung version nila ng mga Ilustrados in late Tsarist Russia, eventually the people who brought down the Tsarist regime and brought into power the most, some would say, the most transformational revolution in human history. Although, bago niya ako i-retag, I have a lot of criticism about the Russian Revolution. I keep on going back to what went wrong and what could have gone right, no? Reading different biographies, whether Stalin's, Lenin's, Trotsky's, whether it's a biography by conservative writers or conservative thinkers. I have multi-volume work, for instance, by Kotkin, Professor Kotkin of Stanford University, Hudson Institute. So there are a couple of people, there are a couple of things we can talk about. Anyway, before things get out of control, eto guys, so please check out kanina in discussion natin with Authority Jesus Falsis, because first of all, we clarified it very well, no? Talagang inulit-ulit natin. First of all, there is a precedence for the Supreme Court of the Philippines actually reversing itself even when almost in perfect symmetry, meron kang en banc na basically unanimous vote. So we have a precedence for that. As you may know, it had to do something about some GMO talong, right? At Harry Roque apparently was on the losing side of the debate. Ayoko na ulitin yung mga debate namin about what went wrong and right about that talong. But basically, the case involving Greenpeace back then, because Greenpeace was trying to push back against this GMO-fied talong, was that, basically they didn't know the basic science, scientific facts, no? So once that became clear, the Supreme Court actually reversed itself. So this is almost exactly 10 years ago. We talked about that particular case. Ipopost natin ulit dito sa ating mga different platforms that particular Supreme Court case para you look at the details. because I don't want to talk about talong forever. The other thing, we also clarified a while ago. So sorry kay Marcoleta, and of course, FYI kay Tito Soto, nag-effort naman siya, yun lang. He should have sana cited not just any case of the Supreme Court reversing itself, but a Supreme Court in a case that the Supreme Court reverses itself, even when it was en banc. And the symmetry is important because we're looking at factual updates, correction, or oversights. Yun pong pinag-usapan natin. Okay, that's one thing. The second thing we talked about is this idea na yes, immediately executory, but not final. Precisely because we're talking about multiple motion for reconsiderations. We're talking about status quo ante requests, right and left. So in that case, again, very dubious yung argument na sinasabi ng mga ibang kaibigan natin na kasi dahil sinabing immediately executory tapos na usapan. No, hindi pa siya final. So we should wait, and we should have waited perhaps for the Supreme Court to go through the motion for reconsideration, particularly because you have no less than, ayan na, yung mga henyo natin ng Kadide, sabi nila, bakit abogado ba yan? Yes, abogado yung ex-Chief Justice Puno, ex-Chief Justice Panginiban, abogado po yung mga ex-Senior Associate Justices, Carpio, Ascuna, we can go on and on and on about UP Law School, of course, the former Dean of UP Law School, who's now Solgen, who wrote the MR of the House of Representatives. So please lang, all right? Try harder. Anyway, so we're moving towards what at least some of us see as de facto oral arguments which should have happened to begin with. But anyways, somehow yun yung hope natin ngayon, at titignan itong motion for consideration, titignan yung mga facts of the case, yung procedures sa Kongreso, and of course yung more fundamental arguments about whether nagkaroon ng judicial overreach, whether nagkaroon ng undue tinkering, for instance, with the threshold and procedures around impeachment, not only impeachment of Sara Duterte, but impeachment of any high-level official in the future, which would have very dire or serious consequences for accountability. So isa pang issue yan pinag-usapan natin. And then we also went to other important issues, which is etong debate about what does archiving mean? Because yung initial effort galing sa mga kaibigan natin dyan, hindi naman daw DDS, guess lang naman. Basically, ang effort nila dyan was to dismiss the whole thing. Bring it back to what Team DDS, Batorni, and the rest were trying to do back in the 19th Congress. And very similarly, parang nangyari dito is, again, we got kind of a splitting the difference. Very cheesy, right? And if you look at the very cheesy move that happened here is parang hindi siya na-dismiss, pero na-archive siya. But there's still a debate around what does that mean. Does archive mean deads na, as actually Soto put it in a moment of emotional exuberance, or how should I put it? Else, or actually there are a lot of legal minds, and a while ago actually we also talked about this with Attorney Falsis. Now just because it's archive, it doesn't mean na tapos ng usapan. Parang medyo parang it's put on the ice, and then pwede ibalik yan just in case. Again, it's far from sure. Let's say we're not looking at the case of total reversal, right? All you need is 8 justices to reverse, and then you'll be in a new territory again, and we're back to interesting times. No, anyway, so we clarify all of those different points. I want to also go to a couple of things I didn't manage to squeeze in kasi ang dalda namin pareho, but I think they're also of importance beyond just legal debates and legal questions. One is, again, I think I've run out of number of people who said they never thought in their life they'll be like on in Team Tito Soto's side. Although I felt medyo slow yung entry niya, and he was trying to build up, but of all due respect to our very senior statesman there, but he had efforts, and I think his speech when he decided, dun nung inexplain niya yung vote niya, I think that was quite in fairness, I would say steering enough, if not sonorous. And then if you look at it, some may disagree with me, but I think the efforts by Risa, of course, she's not legally trained, but I think her efforts themselves were quite reasonable. I think more than reasonable, they were very commendable. I felt Risa coming in and immediately saying, wait lang, bakit natin dinidiscuss itong mga bagay-bagay, itong tao na to, kakapasok lang sa Senado, hindi nga siya sworn in dun sa trial, right? The trial effectively started, di ba? Meron ng mga ganyan, di ba? So, bakit parang, what's the sequencing here? So, parang nasaan na ba tayo? Ano ba to? Plenary ba to? Trial na ba to? Meron bang trial? Have we lost our jurisdiction? Did we acquire jurisdiction to begin with? Basically, we went down the whole Asimov time travel, sequencing, I don't know, prime radian kind of mambo jumbo debate. But that was an interesting attack. And then I noticed more than an hour in, people are wondering, okay, nasan si Bam, right? And in fairness naman kay Bam, although I was quite disappointed na hindi siya nag-speech. Didi, nung siya, nung voting, pero yung intervention niya to begin with, I think it was a good intervention in the sense that he brought back the discussion literally to the foundations, right? Kasi you keep on hearing from a certain side, ganito ang ginagawa namin as practitioners of law, as trial lawyers, mga ganun. As if naman parang, tingnan nga natin yung track record. But anyway, mga ganyan, di ba? Nagpa-flex-flex pa ng konti yung iba, tapos yung isa naman parang luminary daw. Ang intervention ni Senator Aquino is very simple. It's like, wait, before we even talk about, I don't know, what you did in your own whatever legal profession or whatever, supposed legal luminaries, let's talk about the framers of the Constitution. What they themselves said, and what they themselves said not only about the relevant provisions dun sa mga pinag-usapan nila sa hearing or debate na yan kahapon, but also look at their critic of the Supreme Court ruling on this matter. Oh, this is na naman tayo. Bakit? Abogado ba yung mga framers ng Constitution? Actually, interestingly, hindi lahat ng framers ng Constitution natin ay abogado. Which tells you, this was never about lawyers only discussion. The very fact that yung ating saligang batas was a product of input by many people from different backgrounds. That is what makes it egalitarian democratic. And I always felt it's extremely anti-democratic and super pretentiously elitist in a very third world way to say, oh, dapat abogado lang pwede mag-usap sa issue na yan. Anyway, but sorry nga lang sa mga ka-DDS natin, medyo multiple ex-chief justices, hindi lang justices, but ex-chief justices ay medyo umalma dito. Sorry, UP long lang naman ang nagsasalita dito, etc., etc., right? But at the end of the day, it's not only about credentials, right? It's also about the substance of the argument, or also thinking 2-3 steps ahead in terms of yung effect niya. So kumaga, instead of debating over how many trees we have in this side of the forest, let's look at the forest. I-adjust natin yung buong aperture, diba? Let's look at the big picture. At yun ang pong ginagawa natin. Kaya, FYI lang, dun sa isang mga kaibigan natin dyan na ang galing-galing mag-lecture about ano bang trabaho dapat ng isang political analyst, ano bang trabaho dapat ng isang political operator. Ay, sorry. Ano daw? Political, advocate. Yung mga ganun. Kasi may operator yung isa nagmamaganda nung isang araw eh. May tinatawag pa na public thinkers and intellectuals. And I actually even posted what is the working definition of that, drawing from this fantastic work by Richard Posner, if I'm not mistaken, is a Justice in Bashar, ex top lawyer, or anyways, magistrate in the US. But basically, when you talk about public intellectuals and thinkers, public intellectuals sounds a bit pretentious in our context, but globally, it's a completely acceptable term. Basically, these are people who have stood out, because of their specialization and expertise in a certain important field. Sabihin natin 95th percentile sila or above in that field in terms of publications, in terms of impact, but also they have a public voice, platform, right? And when they make interventions on matters of national and international relevance, they're making it from a position of not only moral and intellectual authority, but also from a position of things could be better in our country, right? Things could be better in our country, right? So, now, hindi natin sinasabi na public intellectual tayo mismo, but anyone who knows. But anyway, the point is that public intellectuals have a role. I mean, in a way, Justice Carpio is playing the role of a public intellectual. In a way, a lot of people who may not be constitutional lawyers, but care about our democracy, care about the direction of our institutions, that's the role of a public intellectual. So we're talking about experts, specialists, thinkers who address the public on important political questions, indeed with ideological and normative implications, drawing on both facts and also debating from a normative philosophical point of view for the sake of common good, or what is their understanding of common good. Now, me being me, I also posted dun sa isang tweet natin all sorts of different readings, for a much more critical point of view, and actually also this inspired my partly I drew my definition of intellectuals also from here is Richard Posner, who actually has a much more critical take on today's public intellectuals in the age of information and increasingly social media. There are a lot of people saying that wala na tayong mga intellectuals, wala na, tapos na yung era na yan, etc. That's so 20th century or Cold War era because the era of ideological debates and all is over. Ako, personally, I never gave up on the idea of public intellectuals and the important role they play in our democracy because alam natin sa ating kasaysayan mismo, public intellectuals, ilustrados per se, played a very direct role in helping us moving in the right direction, right? So if you look at that fantastic book, if you look at the book Brains of the Nation, right? Or the Russian thinkers or Russian intellectuals by Isaiah Berlin. He talks about the role of public intellectuals. They could be playwrights, people who do playwright, people who do theater, people who do philosophy, people who do law. I mean, basically Renaissance man kind of people. Now, if you look at all of those people, right, they played a very important role. And then, of course, one of the books that really inspired me throughout time was Noam Chomsky's book, The Responsibility of Intellectuals. Ng trabaho ng intellectuals is not to be a true public intellectual, is not to be the champion of the strong. So, sino yung mga champion of the strong? Ito yung mga tao ay, ito may konting platform, may konting ano-ano, tapos, ay, dito tayo sa politiko na yan dahil ito maging next na president or popular yan. So, pag tinanong ako sa TV, sasabihin ko, ay, napakagaling ito, ganyan. That's not public intellectual. Medyo iba na yan. Operator na yan. Alright. Okay. So, to be counter-majoritarian even sometimes, when you have mob rule, when you have too many people saying ubusin, too many people saying dictatorship, too many people saying, oh, si Tatay Digong, ganyan. Yun. Buyaka siya. Boom. You have to go against that because being a public intellectual is a moral and intellectual commitment, right? Profound moral intellectual commitment, right? So, sorry na lang dun sa mga local-local lang natin na ibang legislators na medyo limited ang kanilang intellectual horizons. But actually, I'm more than happy to give a whole lecture about all sorts of different books about the role of public intellectuals. Yes, including in the 21st century, right? Na kung ang ating maliit at humble contributions sa intellectual world at sa mga just the leading publications, academic and otherwise, ay hindi tugma dun sa standards ng itong mga galing natin, mga local legislators. Ewan ko na lang. But that's not really why I'm here. I'm not here to give a lecture dun sa mga tao na medyo limited ang kanilang horizons, just to put it nicely. We're here actually to talk about more fundamental issues. And don't worry, we're gonna go to the issue at hand, which is really the title of this discussion today. So itong henyo na to, sana. Itong henyo talaga itong isa to. So, meron tayong henyong magaling talaga to eh. Napaka-impartial, napaka-fair. Ang sabi niya isang araw, kung ayaw naman naging, parang basic ang sinasabi niya, yung mga nagpo-push for impeachment, baka naman ayaw niyo lang kay Sara Duterte. And in fact, speaking of Kilay curve, I have a Kilay curve there. Tapos natin Kilay curve. Yan. Speaking of Kilay curve, si Kilay curve din kanina, medyo tinatamaan niya yung mga kaibigan natin na mga, lang naman, mga ex-senior associate justice level lang naman. Yung isa pa, lumaban pa para sa West Philippines. Medyo malalaki-laki ang credentials ng mga taong ito. But anyway, you see this very idea na, hater lang naman kayo ni Sara eh. Lang naman, kung gano'n lang, talonin niyo na lang sa elections. Alam mo guys, that kind of mindset, that kind of narrative, and to be fair, hindi lang dun sa isang kumukuda parati na senador, but no less than si Boy Kilay, among others. I mean, that guys is, that's a very dangerous kind of mindset, basically. Because what we're saying here is, questions of accountability and rule of law, hintayin na lang natin yung next elections, and then, ganun na lang, para matapos na. Whoa, I'm not sure rule of law works that way, right? Na parang, let's just put our faith in the wisdom of the electorate and they will... Wait, last time I checked, Sino ulit yung mga nananalo sa elections? Sino mga ano ulit ang background nila? Pangalawa, it's not a popularity context. It's about evidence. It's about rules. It's about rule of the law, right? Kaya nga tingnan may nag-post ulit yung mga tingnan yung mga signature. Mary Grace Piatos, Carlos Oishi, Chippy. Meron palang Chippy McDonald. I didn't know that. Chippy McDonald, Milky Bekuya. Ano to? Alaume, Alsome, Ocho. Kokoy Villamin. Ayan, Kokoy Villamin, sumigat yan si Kokoy Villamin. Tapos, Java Nova. Guys, it's even worse than I thought. Fernando Tempura. I mean, guys, hindi lang pala, chicharon at saka, talaga, buffet, Full buffet ang nakikita natin dito. So, dun sa mga ating mga minamahal na kaibigan, ito po yung konteksto. Hindi mo pwede sabihin na, ano lang natin to, hintayin na lang natin yung elections, yun na yun, ayan mo na. Hindi, marami tayong nakita. Now, kung yung ibang kaibigan natin, literally yung ibang kaibigan natin na medyo nagmamaganda ngayon, or in fairness naman, baka sincere naman, galit na galit sa flood control, galit na galit sa corruption, ganon. Tanong ko lang, kamusta, ano po ulit yung stance yun nung panon ni Farmali? Ano po ulit yung mga sinabi niyo yung time na billion-billion ang ginastos sa panon ni Tatay Digong sa flood control? Ano ulit po yung mga sinasabi niyo noon? Ako talaga wala akong zero credibility sa akin mga tao na bigla na lang ngayon ay nagiging super anti-corruption and all, and then halos walang sinabi or tahimik lang. Yung iba nga nagtrabaho pa nga dun sa ibang admin na inaaway-away nila ngayon. Sorry about that. You know, like, no. It's like, no. Dapat consistent ka. We have been saying, problematic ang flood control ngayon. More problematic ang flood control before kasi more flood control pang na-build nung 6 years ni Digong kaysa 3 years pa ni itong isa, diba? But it doesn't mean, it's not an either-or issue. It's a consistency issue. And kaya as public intellectuals, as public thinkers, public educators, sige na nga vlogger intellectual, ang trabaho po natin dito is to put things into perspective and context because of the interest of the common good. Guys, at dahil lang tinitignan po natin dito, guys, ay hindi lang what's happening, but what could happen if we don't do X, Y, and Z, and what kind of country we will have in next 3, 4, 5 years. Will, not would, will. Kasi I'm 100% sure, at the rate things we're going, papunta na tayo dyan, good luck talaga sa atin. Good luck talaga sa atin. Right? Now, having said that, and let me end really, not really end, and this is really where the main part of our discussion starts, guys. Tanggalin ko yung itsura ng mga ito, medyo nasisira yun. Anyway, tapos na ba ang laban? Tapos na ba? Give up na ba tayo? Dami say, mamigrate na lang daw yung ganyan. Dami mga comments na gano'n. Okay na, that's it. Yung mga sabi, that's it, okay, I made ready na. Application na. Okay, wag naman sanang gano'n. Kaya kahapon sabi ko kay Jess, tulugan muna natin to. Sabi ko, tulugan muna natin kasi baka mainit na ulo natin. Mamaya mali-mali pang sasabihin natin kung saan mapuntang usapan or baka in a moment of frustration kung ano na nang sasabihin natin. And speaking of that, speaking of speaking in a moment of frustration and then baka naman you might produce the opposite of what you want to produce. Let me, first of all, go back also to yung intervention natin kagabi. On this whole by the way, happy birthday kay Senator Antonio Trillanes. Leo pala siya, di ba? Leo ngayon, ma? Yeah. Oh, Leo. Matapang, katulad ng nanay natin. Anyway, Lola natin. Taurus pala yung mami ko. Well, not too far. Di ba? Oxen versus lion. Anyway, let me choose my words very carefully. Alright? Kasi I know emotions are high. And I think, speaking again, public thinkers, public intellectuals, I absolutely accept every criticism that has been made of me throughout the years of saying, Richard, may platform ka, may bosses ka, may credentials ka, use it wisely. And minsan, baka nagiging masyadong self-indulgent or nag-mirror, Grok, who's the most amazing political podcaster in the country. Hindi ko na makasalanan kung sinasabi ng large language model na alam mo naman, sino number one. But anyway, putting aside all my human frailties, let me also say I absolutely accept the critique from people who are close to our hearts and people who I know have my interest and the interest of the nation in mind when they say, Richard, gamitin mo naman yung platforms mo, yung boses mo sa tamang, or not only sa tama, make sure you make use of it in the most strategic sense of the word, meaning the most positive impact, right? Now, let me go back to this. So, yes, again, happy birthday to Senator Trillanes, and I really felt it was important to remind everyone the kind of sacrifices that the good senator has made throughout the years, and he's continuing to make. I mean, grabe, how many times he risked his life for a country. As I said, I was critical of him when he was launching coups and all, and he knows that. And sabi naman niya, nung nakulong naman siya, kumbaga, nagkaroon siya ng reflection sa buhay, etc. So he has distanced himself from that part of his world, of his life. But this is also the same person that, yes, minit siya ni Digong. So yung mga iba na salaciously sharing pictures niya with Digong, hello, he actually turned down. Digong wanted to get Trillanes as his vice president because believe na believe siya kay Sonny. Alam niya si Sonny ay may military background, may military connection. So alam mo naman, Digong being smart, sabi na, okay, if I get this guy on my side, he's VP, blah, blah, blah. But as you can see in my interview with Sonny Trillanes in 2019 for GMA Network Stanford Truth Show, Sonny said, there's no way I was gonna go with this guy. In fact, tignan mo yung picture niya. Yung picture niya with Digong, he was awkward. And based on what he said on the record, I think hindi lang off the record, sabi niya, I heard some crazy stuff from Digong, yung mga parang payabang-yabang. Sabi ko, ano to, sira? Ano to? Hindi. Kaya nga, hindi pumayag maging hindi nag-team up eh. So, way before yung kanina, yung kuda ng senador na way before that person, actually nilapitan, sa pagkaalam natin ay si Trillanes, but he turned it down. Turned it down, even if, that could have ended him in a very propitious, very favorable position kahit hindi siya manalo as VP, he would have still got some top position, etc. But all I'm saying, yeah, because yun yung nangyari dun sa isa, di ba? Natalo na nga, pero naging Speaker of the House, naging DFA Secretary. Alam niya natin, hindi na kailangan. And napaka-impartial naman kasi niya, hindi naman siya pro-Duterte or anything. Anyway, pero ang galing niya mag-lecture about impartiality. At parang medyo hindi niya alam yung role ng public intellectuals. But anyway, bago tayo mag-blind item sa mga nagba-blind item sa atin, eto, no, don't do that. Don't do that, guys. Grabe, the level of risk Sonny took during 6 years of Digong, and he continues to take the risk. And he will really be in bad situation. There'll be huge risk to his life should the Dutertes come back. Alam natin lahat yan, guys. Should I remind you about that, right? Should I remind you guys about the effort Sonny Trillanes made to make sure na yung ICC, diba? He was one of the persons who filed the communication. He's one of the persons who pushed for it. Now, having said that, and this is where I'm fair, kung may mga troll na walang yan naman, split nila. I'm not talking about from the DDS side. There are also people from the other side na sobrang talagang umayos kayo. Before they try to splice this and spin this and all, I also made it absolutely clear, with all due respect, I even called him our good friend. We have had him so many times on this show. Happy birthday, sir. Pero hindi ako agree with, among others, the tone and the timing of yung mga recent interventions niya, especially yung mga criticisms kay Leni. Like, I just don't think it's helpful at this point. Like, yes, I share this criticism of bakit kayo nag-meet pa ni SARA nung ganito. Yeah, bakit sana this and that. Okay yon. Pero yung ganon, medyo too much. No. And for me, it's, as I said, we need a united front more than ever. Right? We need a united front more than ever. Now, and if you look at dun sa rest ng tweet natin, I was very clear about it, guys. Actually, and the other day I was thinking about this fantastic lecture by Max Weber. Loading natin yan. Si Max Weber, the German sociologist. The German sociologist Max Weber made a distinction between two things. Ethic of conviction versus ethic of responsibility. And some people will say, oh, Richard, you're idealizing things too much. Or some people will say, oh, ito ka naman, Richard, ganyan. But a part of me is still hopeful that what we're seeing here, in the case of Lenny and Risa, is that for me, Lenny really represents what Max Weber would call an ethic of conviction, meaning because sa inyong paniwala, ito yung tamang gawin, you're willing to go all the way and risk it all. And time and again, nakita natin, Risa Ontiveros risk it all alone almost, literally alone as a real opposition. And si Coco Pimentel had this on last moment, whatever. But before that, look at the whole track record. Very, DDS. But anyway, DDS hardcore, then DDS light, then medyo split from DDS, whatever. Anyway, that's what we call politics of conviction. Doing things that are politically potentially damaging, that could have that could politically backfire, things that won't help you in terms of building political momentum, coalition, branding. It's not gonna help your branding. I keep on hearing from friends, Richard, yung branding, don't forget yung branding. Like, like, gusto kong, like, yeah, but there's ethic of conviction. If all of us are we gonna care only about our branding and care about, how can we reach out to the most people in the most least common denominator, ASEAN style, blah blah blah, and then not really do something major, good luck na lang talaga sa atin. If no one is gonna hold the fort, ayoko na gamitin yung mga hold the line, mga ganyan, lost na yan. Hold the fort. If no one wants to hold the fort, if no one wants to take the risk, including to their branding, to their political career, to their political fortunes, ano na mangyayari sa bansa natin? Di sino na magiging, di ba, who will be the flickering light in total darkness, which is basically the kind of political situation we have had since 2015-16. Not that things were really fine, and I've written a million things on failures of liberal reformism and supine liberalism and whatever you want to call it. Please lang yung mga hipokrito dyan na they're trying to point us. No, but my point is, if Riza did not choose to be in minority, over and over again, she had a chance to be in majority under Cheese. She had a chance to, work her way to majority. If there's no one gonna do that, then who's gonna be the symbol of political conviction? And then it's, ano na lang, diba? Having said that, this is what I love about the lecture of Max Weber, because Max Weber was not your typical sociologist, typical academic, political economist, although I love his works. He also tried to run for office. He was not as successful as he wanted, but he said, in politics, you also have to have what he calls ethic of responsibility, right? So what ethic of responsibility means is, it's not only whether what you do is morally, ethically, philosophically right, pero isipin mo rin ano yung magiging implication nito. Is this gonna contribute to the greater good? So sabihin natin, I'm gonna do action X, which is the right thing to do under condition Y, pero yung palang net effect niya is basically, it's like you save 2 trees, and in the meantime you pave the way for others to burn down the whole forest. I don't want to give more concrete examples because it looks like I'm throwing shades at a certain person, space, time in human universe, right? There are times that doing seems most immediately moral and ethical may have long-term dangerous consequences, right? Okay, so for instance, I'll give an example but from a very different context. So sabihin natin nung 1930s, because I was just reading the biography of Leon Blum, the guy behind Popular Front, right? Front Populaire in France. Parang the idea is that, like communists didn't want to join socialists, saying trapong socialists didn't want to join these guys, sabi ng trapo. So ethically it made perfect sense to them. But the net effect of that would be none of them will come into power, and then the ones that would come to power eventually created basically a fascist system, right? And then the rest is history, right? So ethic of responsibility, as Max Weber would argue, is that It's looking at the collective interest and big picture and long-term consequences of your action, right? And this is where I'm willing, from a very Weberian point of view, give some leeway to those who chose not to join Riza Ontiveros in minority and to join majority. And that's why for me, maganda na nakita natin both Pam and both Kiko have taken very strident, particularly Kiko, no, very strident, uncompromising stance dito sa issue ng trial, etc. I appreciate that. But then again, nakita naman natin sa trial na yan, parang everyone was just voting the way they saw it fit, diba? But minority nga, Mig Zubiri, sino ba yung mga minority? Hindi naman bumoto rin dun sa minority, right? Si Soto lang at Risa. Anyway, what I'm saying here is that, or at least this is my fervent hope, that Riza and Lenny could be those two sides of the politics as vocation. That's the title, yun yung lecture ni Max Weber. That they could be complementary in a sense that, remember when Lenny said, again, some people deny that this was in reference to the majority-minority drama, whatever, but basically sinabi niya, we need to also learn to work with different people, be pragmatic, build networks and all. And my sense is that that's the politics of responsibility, but it has to be balanced somehow with ethics of conviction and politics of conviction. So if we can keep those two together, and that is why I see as part of a coalition, progressive coalition, all of them, Senri, Sentri, Lenny, Bam, Kiko, all of them should be there. Sige na nga, Ronald Llamas na rin. Sige. Because you need this combination of politics of conviction, ethics of conviction, ethics of responsibility. And the two can work together. And this is where I want to end really our discussion, because ang nilalabas ng mga kaibigan natin dito is with the archiving basically of the Senate trial, tapos ng usapan, this is just gonna give more momentum to Sara Duterte, and it's game over, and good luck na lang, do whatever you want to do. And that's where I actually have disagreements. I think that's, first of all, that's an extremely problematic argument. Nakakatawa, there's this guy from this Western major magazine, keeps on trying to text me whenever there's development to prove his point na, de, Sara na yan, parang 2 months ago ka lang dumating, tapos ngayon believe na believe ka. Like, yeah, of course, if you have a shallow understanding of the Philippines, yes, of course, all surveys say lead na lead si Sara Duterte. But that's what they also said about Binay up to 6 months, even 5 months before elections. 2-3 years before elections, obviously Binay was seen as a front runner. Maroas was 40-45%. Like, ang layo pa ng 2028. And let's not forget, guys, kaya nga hinintay ko pa yung Supreme Court yung approval rating. But to be fair to the Supreme Court, there's nothing in the Supreme Court ruling that says, right? There's absolutely nothing in the Supreme Court ruling that says na acquitted na si Madam dun sa mga, this whole Miggy Mango and all are not gonna go away, right? And then look at it, the Senate's approval. Look at this kilay. Tingnan yung kilay na yan, yung pababa na kilay, yung kilay na ganyan, yung pababa part, yung pababa. Look at it, from last December, talagang pababa ng pababa approval rating ng Senado. And you can make a very strong correlational analysis na this is the whole forthwith drama. And basically, this is all the kilay moves that we have seen in the past 6-7 months, diba? So, what I'm saying here is that both for Sara Duterte and both for the Senate as an institution, they're not getting away with it exactly. They're gonna pay a price. Approval ratings and satisfaction rates are already down for Senate. The reputation of Senate is really in tatters, with all due respect to the, yes, there are still good senators inside and all. And just the other day I was talking to just a recent ex-senator who was super worried about where everything is going. You talk to a lot of the senators behind the scenes, they're also absolutely they're just horrified with the kind of circus they're seeing and the circus they're expecting in the coming months and years. I have friends na staff in Senate. I feel for them. They're great people, amazing people, wonderful people, and I mean it in a not Trumpian way. So no, it's not like, if service were saying the Senate's approval is going through the roof right now by doing the right thing on Sara, and then if the Supreme Court ruling was saying, oh, Sara totally acquitted, the whole thing is sham, which is what some of these DDS senators are saying, then sabi natin, there was no alternative really to Sara Duterte, then I would say, okay, yeah, magana na tayo. na, alam na, okay, kunin na nun. But hindi eh. Hindi eh. I don't see that. I just don't see that. Yes, Sarah could still win. I'm not saying no. Probabilistically, she's in a slightly better position than the rest. But she has one big problem. Sa dami mga threatened sa kanila, sa pagbabalik nila. Not because they're amazing people, but because of all the threats, all the track record of Digong, all of this legal harassment that is being already inflicted on even including yours truly as early as now, right? Guess what? Everyone will rally behind eventually a candidate who can beat Sara Duterte. And maybe even beat her much easier than many people think. And between now and 2028, there will be all sorts of different efforts to remind people of all of this Migi Mango, Oishi, McDonald, Tempura, Nova, Villamin, whatever, Migi Mango, whatever. And it will just go on and on and on. Right? And then there's Bongo, and there's like, and I can talk about them. And then is it gonna be Robin Hood? Is it gonna be Amy? Like, they're gonna be dynamics, my friends. There's gonna be a lot of dynamics there, a lot of dynamics, and I know it because I talk to people. Anyway, okay, and I've looked at the numbers, permutations. These are privately commissioned surveys. You know, a LENI candidacy is very, very strong. Ang laki ng chance. Especially if everyone else na hindi DDS core rallies behind her, she could go up to 30%, 30 plus percent. Kayang-kaya yan. We have seen weirdly a kind of a tool for Riza tandem also doing very well, right? And let me just say, I was not very happy about the Tulmo brothers. Like, what? Anyway, although Erwin tried to explain things, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, na-archive naman daw, pwede naman ibalik. But, what I'm saying, guys, is, if you're BBM right now, you know a return of Sara would mean, alam natin, alright? Ito ang, di ba? And if by any reason the admin will not have a compelling candidate, it will have no choice but basically to throw its support behind what looks like the other alternative strong movement to the DDS movement, which is the pink movement, right? There are basically now two major movements. The DDS is a legitimate movement. I do not agree with its foundational principle. I do not agree with its rationalization of the horrible things Digong did. But it is a legitimate movement based on grievances, based on anger. Yes, there's some disinformation and all of that to be, but it is a movement. Kilusan po ang DDS movement. Kilusan po yan. Pero kilusan din ang pink movement. And again, I'm looking at all numbers. Risa at the very is very competitive for VP, and Leni very, very competitive for presidency, especially if magkakaroon ng grand coalition, right? Kind of a popular front or front populaire, right? To prevent another Duterte return, right? The reason why I'm reading about 1930s Third Republic fronts, right? Because that broken democracy which eventually broke down, there are lots of similarities. In fact, I got so curious, I even tried to calculate the GDP per capita of France during that time to look at their level of development, their Gini coefficient based on available data with like 2017 constant dollars. Medyo similar sa ating level of development, even economic development of France during the Third Republic. But anyway, we have examples of popular front populaire, right? On the part of BBM, he will have no choice. He'll have to support whoever could prevent the return of ano. Now, there could be some conspiracy theories. Baka daw si Martin gagawin nilang ganyan. I don't buy that. I don't buy that. So, my point is, because of the very aggressive positioning that the DDS have been taken and all this bloodbath discussion and all of that, there's so much incentive for everyone else to team up to prevent the return of Sara Duterte or Duterte's to the Malacanang. Now, does that mean the DDS movement is done? No, of course not. I can still see many DDS candidates doing well in the Senate race, even LGU level, absolutely in Mindanao, parts of Visayas. But my point is, it's absolutely ridiculous for anyone to say, tapos ng laban, hintayin lang natin ng 2028, doon na tayo magkakaalaman. It's, first of all, ridiculous from an analytic point of view. Pangalawa is like, what the heck? What's gonna happen? Like, ganun lang? Hintayin lang natin elections? And then like, And third, it just shows some people are not even pretending to have some degree of, prioritization of accountability and transparency and all of that. Now, having said that, I also agree with folks who are saying let's also fiscalize the insertions being made in the budget, allegedly by alam na sino. Tignan natin yung mga flood control now and also during Digong's time. Let's look at the project. Let's do that. All of those things we should do. They're not mutually exclusive. So I completely disagree with Cheese when he says, oh, basically, that was what Bongo said. He's not even original. Sabi ni Bongo, focus na tayo sa mga gut issues. No, you can have rule of law issues and gut issues together. You can do it both. But if you have no accountability, if you have rampant corruption and abuse of power, we will never become a developed country. We'll never become the country we deserve to be. And we'll never be able to give our people what they truly deserve, the government they truly deserve. Right? I wanted to jokingly say something. Ano, mamaya na natin pag-usapan si Bongo and Bam and the rest. Okay, anyways, on that note, thank you very much, guys. I just felt I had to get this out of my system because I think it's very important for us to realize the stakes are extremely, extremely high. And at the same time, there's really, really high chance that you can indeed get a pink Malacanang come 2028. On that note, thank you very much. God bless. Maraming salamat sa lahat ng mga sumuporta sa atin na at least according dun sa large language models, tayo lang naman, mga pichugin lang naman tayo, pero sino ba naman tayo? Political analyst lang, but by far the greatest, the most amazing. Anyways, okay, bago. ganda sa anong discussion. May Max Weber, ethics of responsibility, tapos biglang may bardagulan naman tayo. Guys, this is what I love about doing this vlog because we don't have to be either or, right? We can be also both ethics of responsibility and ethics of conviction, but we can also be both bardagulan and very respectable, right? And lecture style. So on that note, maraming salamat, guys. Ayun namin ang but my point is, may mga may basis yan. So for instance, if they say these are the this and this, then they'll give you a basis. Like ito yung Google Scholar citation rate, ito yung ganun. That's quantitative and you can actually prove that. Anyway, whatever. By the way, Spotify ratings yung ginamit na basis. Because we are consistently the highest ranked political podcast in Spotify in the Philippines. As in, almost 100% of the time. Okay, so I won't say more about this. And yes, we were top 10 even multiple occasions, which is not easy kasi ang kalaban mo yung mga Pinoy horror stories, not even Cool Pals nga but yung mga yung mga Vice Scandal, mga ganyan. Anyway, before I say something, thank you so much, guys. Maraming salamat. We're still experimenting with this kind of 4K style setup. Sorry na lang kung medyo oily ang face natin. Nagpamasaya tayo ng konti sa barbero kanina. Shoutout naman dyan. Kahit anong gawin na, hindi na wala yung mga oil na yan. At least dito sa YouTube natin, hindi nakita yung oily. Pero sa 4K pala, kitang-kita. Alright, on that note, thank you very much. Maraming salamat. Please continue to pray for us and continue to pray for our movement, yung itong maliit na kilusan na meron tayo. Anyway, when I say pink, I'm really referring to anyone who's sick and tired of kadiliman, kasamaan, katrapuhan, and kasyungahan, right? So basically, someone's a little bit higher level para sa ating bansa. God bless and talk to you soon. Buyakasya. Thank you very much, guys. Maraming salamat. Anyway, may basihan yan. Tinignan yung Spotify ratings and rankings. Kasi ang kaya ng AI is to look at all different rankings and then put them together, collate them. And then you can look at the source. Yeah. Di na ako mag-comment kay Guanzon, okay? Marami siyang mga selfie with differences. But anyway, no comment. Moving on. Maraming salamat and talk to you soon. God bless.